Okay, where we left off last time, we had a basic frame assembled with our front frame horns attached to extend the frame. We've got about 130-inch wheelbase at this point. The open channel of the frames had to have some rigidity installed, so I bought boxing plates or boxing sections for this particular frame piece and put them in conjunction with the boxing plates that I put in the forward portions of the stub of the rear frame and welded them all together. That creates a complete box, like a piece of rectangular tubing, and it gives it a lot more strength and integrity. Plus this flat surface on the inside, I can use things to bolt to or weld to without too much effort and too much trouble. You can see that we also located the radius rods. Radius rods have to have the axle at a certain inclination, and just arbitrarily I picked a spot back here which seemed to be out of the way. I didn't shorten the radius rods. Those are the same length that they were in the 32 when they were installed under that. I just located the holes in each frame rail, spotted them, and I made up a couple little sleeves, 2-inch steel sleeves, drilled 5/8 hole all the way through them, and I put a little boss on one side, drilled an inch hole in this side of the frame, put the sleeve in with the boss sticking out, and TIG welded them. After that, I ran a 5/8 drill through the hole that was already there, and it came through the inside of the frame, and that provides a place for a 5/8 bolt to go all the way through it and nut and lock washer it from the inside. After I located both of those and installed them, this set the front end. We checked the wheelbase at both the right and left side. Then I welded in the steering box plate. This is for like an early Mustang, 67, 8, 9 Mustang steering box, which I've had around for a long time. This plate I bought from Speedway and located it so that the steering arm basically pivots from the same point the radius rods do, and that's the way it's supposed to work. As the axle goes up and down, if this is in a different place, that kind of steers the car, because this point here doesn't move in the same arc that this point does. So it's important to have this, when everything is zero, it's important to have these basically the same length so that the car's pointing straight forward and there's no mis-arc from the suspension making its normal routine traveling as you go down the road. This will change as the steering box turns to the left, this goes forward. As it turns to the right, this goes rearward. But you're in a turn then, and it's not nearly as crucial or critical as just going straight down the road. So I have it lined up to go straight down the road. We have to fabricate a pitman arm. Goes from the outside of this to the steering arm, which we used from the 32. We just flipped it upside down so the taper's on top. And that'll give this drag link basically a parallel position, or as close as you're going to get to it, to the wishbone and to the ground, so we don't get what's called bump steer. After we finished assembling this front end, I thought it was time to have the body close by and put it on the frame. We did that with the forks on the tractor, rolled it outside, set it down, just kind of scooched it back. There are some issues that we have to address. First off, the thing's too tall. Didn't want a rat rod this tall. Most rat rods are low down and slung. That's why I went for the kick up in both the front and rear of the frame, so we could get the cab closer to the ground. Basically, this cab's going down the height of the frame, and it's going rearward about 8 inches, which is where the step in the back of the frame that we Z'd, you can see the Z section, the frame's no longer straight in this position. It has a step to it. We're going to have to cut out a notch in the back of that cab so that that'll slide back without gaining any elevation. And ultimately it will end up sitting right here and right there, probably up on the cab somewhere up in here, I'm going to guess. That'll straddle that. I'll also have to cut centerpiece out of the back of the cab to clear the drive shaft, because this is going down quite a bit. I won't cut that out until I actually have the engine and transmission in place and see how much we have to cut out of there for the drive shaft. This is not going to have a great impact on what happens inside the cab, because inside the cab, open that door, Brian. Inside the cab there is a little room behind the seat. That little vertical panel has got to come out. That's just screwed in place. I took a couple screws out of it the other day and it worked alright, but then there's some screws I'm going to have to grind the heads off to get it out. But we will intrude on that, getting that cab back and down on that frame. Same way with this little cross member in the floor. That's got to be cut out right between it. As you see, it's got to go down and straddle the frame, and then we'll make a little right angle bracket to bolt to each side of it and to the frame, ultimately to anchor it where it belongs. This should not intrude on the seating arrangement, or at least that's what I'm planning. 8 inches is about to the front edge of that shelf that you see there at the rear bottom of the cab, and as long as we have that shelf anywhere near where it belongs, the seats are going to go back in it. That's basically what we're saying. If we use the original seats, which we have, so be it. All we can do is cover them, or we can put any kind of seating arrangement in it that we want. Probably the cab is going to be, I'm going to say, probably 8 inches lower than what it is now, because I want to get it 8 inches lower and 8 inches further to the rear. I want to get it down so I can see over the top of it, for one thing, and give it a little lower center of gravity. Once we do that, we kind of locate the, I've got to cut out some parts of the front of the firewall where the original body pads were. Those are too narrow. I'm going to cut them out probably with either a plasma cutter or a Sawzall. We're going to widen it so that it will sit over the frame and straddle the frame and kind of center itself on the frame as far as right and left goes. And it's just a matter of how far down we set it. Like I say, when I get the look I want, then I'll quit. Then we make right angle brackets and attach it all using a piece of 1/4-inch rubber underneath the brackets to isolate it from everything. And that's about where we are. Brian brought down a whole bunch of parts that were stored at his house, and we'll go through those, and I see several things that we'll probably end up using out of there in an effort to make it look old and antique-y, so on and so forth. We've got some real neat turn signals that we can mount on there, some odd parking lights. There's some federal parts in there which we may or may not use. But all in all, there's neat old stuff in there, very nostalgic stuff that's going to end up on this rod. The flat motor, I've got to get the flat motor together because I need to position it. Once I get that cab down where I want it, we'll have to set a motor and transmission in place, and I have to fabricate motor mounts that go underneath the water pumps on each side and front. And we have a transmission mount, which one I bought, which is a very simple generic mount. We can locate that anywhere in the chassis, in between the bottom frame rails. That's just sitting in there right now. But I gotta get this motor together, and as you can see, there's the oil pan. There's all kinds of parts gathered to help, differentiate what's got to go on. There's an oil filter, for example, a bunch of gaskets. I had to buy some new water pump gaskets. These were all dried up. This should go together without too much effort. Once it's together, then we can kind of put it over there and mock it up and build motor mounts, and then slide that transmission mount where it falls in place, and then it'll begin to really look like a truck. That's about it for now.